Hi there, welcome to the latest episode of my 10-minute moan. And the topic of this 10-minute moan is looking at the actual Rudakubana inquiry, which has given us two crazy bits of information over the last 24 hours. The first one being a head teacher who was told to remove the word sinister from a report she'd done on him as a young boy, and another set of specialists who had a surprising £5 bet on the outcome of his life. So what's happened to Rudakubana, in case you're not aware, if you've been living in the moon since last summer, he is the boy who, when he was 17, murdered three absolutely lovely little girls at a thing in Southport. And he was obviously arrested. There was a lot of carry on about it at the time. A lot of people were arrested for even talking about the aftermath of the situation. And let's give you a sort of rundown of what happened. He went to an Acorn school. Now that's where Rudakubana was enrolled after his expulsion for bringing a knife to the Range High School. It's a pupil referral unit in Ormskirk, Lancashire, and it was led by a head teacher called Joanne Hodson. Now this pupil referral unit is something older people like myself would have called probably a borstal, that sort of thing, years ago. But we're not allowed to use those terminologies now, in case we pigeonhole kids. His case was forwarded to the Forward Child and Adolescents Mental Health Service, which closed his inquiry into him in March 22 due to a pending autism diagnosis. So this mental health organisation who was looking into him stopped looking into him when it became possible that he had autism, which I find a bit bizarre, seeing as autism is something that you would imagine was under the control of people who deal with mental health. However, what's happened since then, in January 16th of 2025, the British government decided to open an inquiry into what happened at that horrific day in Southport. So I want to look at, and there was another group of people who had this was at the mental health place where they had this £5 bet. So I'm going to look at that first, and then I'll look at the thing where a head teacher was told to take out the words sinister in a report about this guy who went on to be very sinister and murder three children. So this £5 bet, this was among professionals who were discussing the Rudakubana's care back in 2019. So that would have been 5 years before the crime. He'd have been about 12 years of age at the time. It provides a glimpse into the early concerns and uncertainties surrounding his behaviour as uncovered during the Southport inquiry. So, where am I getting this bit? Right, the £5 incident. During the October 21, that was 3 days ago, session at the Southport inquiry, testimony from health service staff involved with Rudakubana in 2019 brought to light an unusual moment during a professional meeting. A senior figure who has been identified as Mr. Hicklin, likely a healthcare professional, though his exact role remains unspecified in the reports. He reportedly made a £5 bet with colleagues about what would happen next in Rudakubana's case. Now this was framed as a comment on the unpredictability of his behaviour, with Mr. Hicklin noting there was no crystal ball to foresee the outcomes. Now, what's happened here is a lot of people are saying that that's a terrible thing to do and these people weren't professional enough and blah, 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 right? But it would probably, in my eyes, be highlight of concerns where somebody saying, I'll bet you a fiver that kid goes on to do X, Y or Z. But it's actually looked at something to throw bad light on the people dealing with them and not in bad light at how that kid was back in 2019. And I find the whole thing a bit peculiar. Anyway, what they were saying was, inquiry held that during this meeting where they had the £5 bet, Rudakubana had displayed a lack of emotion or remorse and required regular searches for knives. Because he had a habit of taking knives to places he shouldn't have knives. And that was noted in Hodgson's emails to staff. And the £5 bet aligns with his concerns, suggesting that professionals were aware of his potential for escalation but lacked the resources or, wait, hear this, the authority to act decisively. And that, to me, is pretty damn frightening. Because the whole point of this inquiry is to see if the establishment had failed these wee girls in any way. And I think it's quite evident that in a few of these instances I'm highlighting today alone, then we did. These people are tasked to guess. These people are tasked to put facts in front of them, behavioural, scientific, mental health stuff, and decide the best course of actions for children. And when they make a mistake, it can be deadly, as we've seen in Southport a few short years later. Now, the other thing that happened that just disgusts me, this one really does trouble me, was this head teacher's claim during the inquiry that she had the word sinister removed from a report about Axel Rudakubana's education plan. Now, this was at the time where he was taken from his school because he'd been taking knives in, he was expelled, and he was put into this different place. The head teacher there had to write a report about him, this June Hodgson. Now, she was a teacher at the Acorn School. Hodgson was directly involved in managing Rudakubana's case upon his arrival in late 2019. So what would that make him? What are we going to say? Behind me is Glasgow Sheriff Court, one of Europe's busiest courts. And because of that fact, we'll see every week several members of the public and podcasters, etc., facing trials in here for a number of things. However, an increase in number are for posts on social media, videos on YouTube, etc., etc., etc. And for that reason and that reason alone, I believe it would make sense for everybody who does podcasts as a minimum to join the Free Speech Union, because they will help protect you when the law turns on you. That doesn't give you carte blanche to say what you want as a member, but it does give you the protection to help you when the law goes wrong. This is not now only something that should be considered by podcasters, because we are seeing more and more people each day arrested. Normal people who don't even see themselves as civilian journalists, arrested for posts on social media. So it makes sense to join the Free Speech Union, because we live in this country in 2025. So he's about 11 or 12. And her observations and actions form a critical part of the Southport inquiry, which began in April the 7th, to investigate the failures of public bodies and what we could have done to prevent the attack. So the word sinister. Upon enrolment at this school, Hodgson conducted an initial assessment and described his behaviour as sinister in his education plan. This term reflected her professional judgment, informed by memorable first meeting with Rudakubana, where he admitted to bringing a knife to use it while showing no remorse. Hodgson also noted a sense of dread and warned staff to regularly search him for weapons, indicating her perception that he would be a very high-risk individual. Now, Hodgson then faced criticism from, up until now, unnamed mental health workers who accused her, hear this, of racially profiling Rudakubana. This accusation stemmed from the perception that her use of the word sinister and her risk assessments were influenced by his race rather than his behaviour. I would suggest that a kid that has several times been found with a knife and a teacher describing that as sinister had absolutely zero to do with skin colour and any other motive. It was solely based on the amount of times he'd brought a knife into places he shouldn't have knives. However, these unnamed mental health workers decided to tell this head teacher that she was being in some way racist by using the word sinister in her description of a kid who went on to murder 3 children. This is awful. The pressure was significant enough that Hodgson felt shut down professionally and agreed to remove the word from the education plan, along with other descriptions like cold and calculating. This alteration occurred end of 2019 to 2020, shortly after, as I said, that he was referred to the Forward Child and Adolescent Mental Health Service. The change was documented and later scrutinised during the current inquiry. And I find this absolutely bonkers. It's absolutely disgusting. And I hope that these unnamed mental health workers, I actually hope it affects their sleep at night. Because if you hadn't stopped that sort of stuff, the sinister, and what was the other one, cold and calculating, from that kid's reports, would it have saved the lives of 3 other younger children? Could it have been the one thing that sparked our establishment to do the right thing? And these people are so scared of being called a racist that they put their other judgments in the back burner in case somebody happens to think they're racist, when all they've done is describe a person who went on to murder 3 people as sinister, cold, calculating. That sits terribly with me, and I hope it sits even worse with the people that made that head teacher remove it from a report. So if you want others to see this video, click the thumbs up, put the comments below, hit the like button, share button. If you've not already done so, or you think you already have, please check the subscribe button. And if you've not, then hit the subscribe button below. But far more important than all of that, unless you're the type of person that forces professionals to change their independent thoughts about some violent children, in your fear of them being called racists, then not you. But everyone else, have a great day. Cheerio, bye now.